There we go. Now I'm recording. So thank you all for joining our landlord recruitment and retention workshop. We are here today because we really want to talk about some best practices and methods and suggestions to recruit and retain landlords to work with our housing assistance programs. That might include rapid rehousing. It might include emergency housing vouchers. There are a lot of different assistance programs out there. So we wanted to come together and talk about some best ways to bring landlords into the work that we are doing, how to make landlords want to stay involved with the work that we are doing so that we can, really serve our clients better and so that we as a system can address housing and homelessness better. The information that we go through today, the suggestions that we come up with today, we're going to put this into a list that gets shared with the Pinellas Continuum of Care's Board of Board of Directors, Funders Council, and Providers Council. And they're going to take this and they're going to look at it and consider how we can maybe work some of these suggestions into the system of care, what individual providers can do at their level, because we are going to share this with the Providers Council, who I hope will take this back to their individual agencies and say, all right, team, here are some suggestions that folks have given us. How can we make some of this work? And also so that we can share this again with our Funders Council so that funders can really consider how they can help us address housing and homelessness through landlord recruitment and retention efforts. So with all of that in mind, thank you all for joining us. My name is Victoria Kelly. I am the Senior Manager of Advancement and Strategy with the Homeless Leadership Alliance of Pinellas, the lead agency in that Pinellas Continuum of Care. And I am really grateful that so many folks are joining on today to talk about and share some suggestions and ideas and best practices for landlord recruitment and retention. Before we dive in, I also want to introduce a couple of our team members here at the HLA. Alex, would you like to say hello?
Hello, I'm Alex Strider. I'm the Director of Program Services here at the Homeless Leadership Alliance of Pinellas. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you, Alex. And then David is our Landlord Liaison here at the HLA. David, would you like to say hi to everybody?
Hi, everyone. I'm David Atkins. I'm the Landlord Liaison. I know a few of you, but thank you for joining us, and it's good to see everybody's faces.
Thank you very much. And there are a few folks on the call, so I'm not going to make everybody do a self-introduction, but if you would please do us the favor of introducing yourselves in the chat. I think that would be really helpful. It's good to know who's on the line with us, and it's always great to make connections. So go ahead, put your name, your title, your agency, your contact info, and anything else you want to share in the chat, and we will dive in. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. All right. Here we go. Everybody's looking at the agenda, right? I want to make sure I'm sharing the right thing. Oh, nope, it says it's loading.
No,
Nobody's looking at anything yet.
No, it's...
Sorry about that. Let me stop that and try again. Sometimes technology just doesn't really like me very much. Let me try again here. All right, give us a second. Hopefully that comes up. There we go.
I see the agenda now.
Perfect. So we already talked about what we're all doing here together today to identify some best practices to develop recommendations for effectively recruiting and retaining landlords. We are not in here today to come up with an action item list of things to do. Nobody's going to be leaving here with a bunch of homework unless you haven't completed the survey and you want to complete that survey or share it with anybody. But we are not creating or giving anybody a task list. So don't worry about that. We are just in this room, in this virtual room, coming up with some suggestions and best practices to share. And again, these are to recruit and retain our landlords who are working with programs like rapid rehousing and housing choice vouchers. And so that's really the overall of what we are doing here today. And before we really jump into suggestions for best practice, we also wanted to share some information about something some folks on the line with may be familiar with, but might be some new information to some of you, and that is the Rapid Rehousing Risk Mitigation Fund. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Alex, who will give you some information about the Risk Mitigation Fund. Alex?
Thank you, Victoria. Would you mind sharing? Perfect. Thank you so much. Again, I'm Alex Strider, the Director of Program Services at HLA. And on the topic of landlord recruitment and retention, I did want to discuss an update to our Rapid Rehousing Risk Mitigation Fund. I've been sharing this at other meetings, so I apologize if you've heard it before. I promise I'll be brief. This funding was received by the Pinellas Community Foundation back in January of 2018, specifically for rapid rehousing to pay to help cover damages to a unit above and beyond the security deposit. The maximum claim amount for many, many years was $500 total. We had paid out claims totaling $1,346.86. However, recently at the Providers Council meeting in February, it was voted and approved to increase that maximum payment amount to $2,500 per claim. So that is now in effect. That is the update to the fund. And just for your information, all of the landlords that have been paid out previously from this fund have all been willing to continue renting to rapid rehousing participants. So this fund is not just used for the recruitment of landlords to help to ease their mind a little bit if their concern is that a rapid rehousing tenant will destroy their unit, but also can be used as a retention tool so that we can say we have a little bit of a skin in the game in case there are issues that arise. And a little bit more skin in the game now that a maximum amount went from $500 to $2,500 total. And I think the fact that the fund itself has not been heavily utilized is a selling point in and of itself because it hasn't been needed. So as long as there are available funds, which there are now, in order to access these funds, the landlord would reach out directly to the rapid rehousing agency that placed the client, and they would obtain the claim form and obtain the necessary documentation that's needed to submit the claim. They would submit that directly to the rapid rehousing agency. Usually that's the housing specialist. The housing specialist would collect all the documentation, send it over to us at HLA. We would review the packet, and then if leadership approves that, HLA would send the check directly to the landlord. So that's the process for the Rapid Rehousing Risk Mitigation Fund. I wanted to share that positive update in the increase of the maximum amount from $500 to $2,500 with this group. I have shared my contact information in the chat, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have about it.
With that in mind, does anybody have any questions about that Rapid Rehousing Risk Mitigation Fund before we dive into anything else?
I just want to say for the record that I think FHAP is probably the only rapid rehousing program, if I'm not mistaken, Alex, to have used the risk mitigation fund. Unfortunately, I bet it was good, but a lot of damage was done to some of the units, but Alex is correct. A lot of the landlords continue to work with our program. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much for sharing, James. That's really important to note that it's not just there, it's actually working. So thank you so much for sharing that. Does anybody else have a question or a comment about this landlord or this Rapid Rehousing Risk Mitigation Fund? No? All right. Not hearing any. Feel free to put those comments in the chat, or if you have questions about it that you just don't want to ask here privately, like Alex said, she put her email in the chat. So please feel free to reach out, and we are happy to answer questions about that one. So as we go on down the list, we wanted to talk about landlord, of course, recruitment and retention and some best practices. So everybody was sent a survey. If you haven't filled that out yet, it's okay. It wasn't mandatory. We wanted to give ourselves a place to really start the conversation and give folks who can't participate today an opportunity to share their suggestions. If you want to, please go ahead and fill this survey out. Please also feel free to share this survey with other folks here in the field who might have suggestions. We welcome them, and we will continue to check the results of this survey even after today. So as we talk about this, I sent out about a half an hour ago the results of the survey as they were about noon today, and wanted to start talking about some of those results. So, as we talk about this, what are some of the best methods that we have found to recruit new landlords? Because one of the real issues that we have here in Pinellas County is there's not really enough housing in our community. And there's even less housing that's really affordable and that's willing to work with our programs. So, what are some of the best practices that folks on this group have found to connect with new landlords?
Well, the
Thank
way the way that I've done it is mainly by word of mouth. Before I became the housing navigator here at HEP, I was the CHAP coordinator for the county, and so I got to meet a lot of different landlords and help a lot of different families. And so after that ended, and now that I'm doing what I'm doing now, I go back to what I was doing before and reminding myself of a lot of landlords that I worked with in the past and kind of go back to them and say, hey, I'm doing this now. Do you have anything available? And with some of them, I've gotten some, a lot of, built a friendship and a relationship with. So I was able to go back and talk to them and say, hey, I'm doing this now. Can you work with me with this? And also, if you know of any other landlords, um, uh, not just with apartments, but with shared housing and things like that. And that's how I've kind of built what I'm doing right now.
I have a question. I mean, do you guys get the landlords to decrease their maybe lower interest rates, less money down? I mean, not, I'm sorry, not my head is in housing right now, but a lower down payment. Do you negotiate all that? Or is
I'd like to,
Sometimes.
yeah, I'll go. Oh, go ahead, Phil.
No, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
I want to just piggyback off of what Phil said in regards to just making that first contact with landlords. When you are able to track them down, those face-to-face visits are golden because you want to build that relationship, but you want to shake their hand and you want to meet them and see what they're all about.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they really want to work with the program, but for them, you just need to ease their mind.
Hmm.
Give them all the specifics on the program, what you're trying to accomplish. And for the most point, there are times where you can negotiate the rent down. You can negotiate with the landlord depending on what their needs are as well. So the face-to-face visits are important because it's important for you to individually find out what's important to this landlord.
I'd
Yeah.
How
like to,
fast they're trying to get somebody into the unit, and what it is that they're looking for long term. Most
Hmm.
landlords don't just want somebody in the unit for 12 months. They want someone in there long term. And the face-to-face visits and the ongoing contact helps you build, like Phil said, a positive relationship with them. And the better that relationship, goes, the better you have opportunities to negotiate uh,
Right.
rent. Sometimes, believe it or not, there's many times where they want 3 times the monthly rent. Sometimes you can work it down depending on if it's privately owned, mom and pops. You can work with a landlord if they want to work with the program, they believe in the tenants, and they like the relationship that you have going with them.
but I think oftentimes I want to follow up on what Danya asked regarding negotiations. And David, you're correct. But, with rapid rehousing, there are those landlords out there who are, you know, they run credit checks, even some of the private ones. And, we do have some folks who've come back through rapid rehousing, uh, a couple times. So sometimes they see that and, they ask for those double deposits. And I think, also, those good relationships, you can, kind of smooth that out. But, a lot of times you have to kind of, you know, do throw an extra, $1,000 toward a security deposit, and then, maybe tweak, um, administrative fees or something of that nature. So
Mhm.
it's challenging,
It is.
particularly when there is multiple evictions.
Yeah.
large families. I know currently right now we have a family of 7, if I'm not mistaken. So that is a challenge.
No, James, I understand completely. And like you said, I call them special considerations. And when I'm talking to landlords, I say, I have an individual or a family that has some truly special considerations. And I'd like to know what your take is. Let me just, tell you about the individual or the family so as I don't waste your time, and as we go into detail about it. And like you said, sometimes families come back through. Um, and what we always tell individuals is we want you to treat this as if it is the job opportunity of a lifetime, because it's up to you. We can get you in the unit, we can pay move-in expenses, we can help you halfway, but the rest of it is up to you. So you need to build that strong, lasting relationship as well with the landlord, because some of them will filter back through the system. And I've had a lot of landlords, anyone that deals directly with owners, landlord, leasing managers knows that our job not only is to build that relationship, but more importantly, put their mind at ease with the individuals that they're taking on, because they're doing an amazing thing for our clients. They're giving them the opportunity to rebuild their life, give them peace of mind, and give them hope. But also, we can only do so much. We're not miracle workers. They have to be able to stand on their own 2 feet once we get them into the unit. And part of that is providing ongoing support. I cannot tell you how often I get calls from landlords, leasing managers to ask me questions about individuals we've put in their units. And I always tell them, I'm always available for you. We're not just dropping this individual or this family off. You can always reach out to me if you have questions or you have concerns. And I think that's helped alleviate some of the stress as well. There's only so much, truly we can do. Um, and as this meeting goes on, there's a few other things I'd like to talk about, just about training for our clients that we put into the units. I think that's a big help as well, helping them understand simply what that lease agreement entails. Most of the time, for them, it's just getting in the unit. We've said we will cover their move-in expenses, and they think it's a done deal at that point in time. Well, it's not. Once again, you have to show the landlord that you are responsible and you can sustain this. And I don't even care if that's a voucher referral. You still have to show that landlord that you are respectful of that unit and responsible as an individual.
I didn't
And
know
that's
if you guys are aware, but there's agencies, there's HUD approved housing counseling agencies. They don't just do, some of them also do rental rental counseling on top of homeownership counseling, where they sit down with them, they go over their budget, they look at their credit reports, they help them fix their credit report, they teach them how to budget, things like that. I'm sure you guys already do that, but just additional resources just in case.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind, could you drop a link for that in the chat for anybody who's unfamiliar?
Sure.
Thank you.
David, I'll just say I appreciate the points you're making and the ongoing back and forth that you have with landlord participants. I'm curious, and I totally get what you're saying when, there's only so much you can do. You're not miracle workers. Like, what, in your experience, what happens when the rubber hits the road and, the resident, whether it's a, I don't know, lease violation or they didn't pay their rent, like what happens when you come to that crossroad and there's an issue?
Generally, number one, I get the call from the owner, the landlord, the leasing manager at that point in time, and it's putting out fires. It truly is. They've given the individual the opportunity or the family, and at that point in time, you really just have to try to work it out. So there's a lot that goes on, and Alex knows, so I'll keep Alex in the loop about everything. We'll try to work things out, and you're still negotiating at that point in time. What I've found in my experience is landlords really do not want to evict individuals. They really don't. That's the last step. And when it comes to that, when you're putting out fires, at that, I'm really just trying to just help out as much as I possibly can. I want the owner, the landlord to tell me exactly what's going on. I'm going to reach out to the client at that point in time to see if this is something that we can help them out with, that we can fix. Because if it's a pretty simple fix, most of the time the landlord just wants to know, hey, I just really want someone else to talk to them because they don't seem to be responding to me. But if you can just reach out to them, and I'll tell the landlord, let me give them a call. Let me talk this out with them. Let me see what's going on to make sure we're getting the same story. They just want the support. They just want to know that they're going to be able to work through this because they don't want to have to evict them.
Yeah,
I've worked
because
with a lot of landlords that can be patient, and I've worked with some that don't have the patience for it.
if they feel like they're out there just in the ether, just dealing with this family all the time, different times, and with no real support, then they're just going to start going back to thinking like, I'm not going to rent to this person,
Correct.
I'm not going to rent to that person because there doesn't seem to be any outlying support. Even if they're getting support, financial support,
Birth certificate. Normally, people don't have that on file.
it's still not
I
enough
mean,
for
he has a
them.
real ID, right?
Yep.
Usually, okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I hope that helped out a little bit. But another thing, in a situation like that, when just like Phil said, when you're talking to the client, you know, that's not a session where you're trying to boost their confidence, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help them work through this because, quite honestly, the clients are just as stressed as the owners and the landlords in this situation. The clients are thinking they're going to be back out on the streets. They're not going to get any more assistance. And the landlord is thinking, like Phil said, here we go again. I gave this individual this opportunity, and they're not going to be able to come through for me. So it's
Yeah.
really just trying to get both sides on the same page and seeing if they can work through it.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate the thoughts there and the sentiment. It just, again, for me, it's okay. So that kind of intervention seems to work. Was it 50% of the time, 80% of the time? And what happens in the remaining like 20%?
There are instances where it might be too far gone. So generally right away when I'm meeting, we talked about these face-to-face visits. I'm not just sitting down with landlords. I'm talking to landlords like I've known these guys for years. I want to get to know them inside and out so I know their tendencies. I know if I can work with them, and that helps with the ongoing contact and support. But there are instances, like you said, where you may not be able to work that out with them. You may not be, able to fix what's going on. But if they know, don't let it get too far gone. And you might be able to intervene and save that relationship. Because once again, more than often, most landlords don't want to have to evict the individuals. So they'll email me, they will call me, they will say, hey, David, I have a situation with the client. Is there anything you can do to reach out and talk to them and let me know what's going on? And I do. And I'll give them a call back. Hey, John, I had a chance to talk to the client. This is where we are. Yeah, we're hearing the same story. Where are you at right now, John? Is there anything we can do to, rectify the situation? Because one thing we can't do is once we've given them the move-in expenses, everyone thinks that we can, hey, can you write out another check? They're 2 months behind. There's certain things that we can't fix. We can't keep doling out money, but if it's a loss of a job and they're looking, believe it or not, I've had a lot of landlords that have said, I will work with them, but they need to maintain contact with me so I know what's going on. And in my experience, this is just my experience, when they're having those issues, and this is not a voucher based referral, when they fall behind, they don't keep that line of communication. They disappear. And when the landlord starts showing up and knocking on the door, then it's too far gone, and I tell them, this goes for the clients as well. Let me know what's going on. Let me know where you're at, because you can't just get in there and do the same old thing you've been doing. This is a new start. That means new habits with that. So build that relationship and instill trust on both sides. But there's only so much we can do.
Yeah. And so at a certain point, the landlord gets to the point where he doesn't even care about move-in assistance. You know, he gets to the point where he's like, okay, I understand you have move-in assistance to help this family get in, but I've been burned and
Yeah.
I'm not going back because um, I don't have any communication with these past families, and so now I'm feeling like I don't want to deal with it anymore, because even though you're offering all of this money for them to move in. So like you said, David, it's important to step in and help some of these families, to help with the landlord, to help them all understand that everybody has a role to play, especially the families moving in, that they need what they need to do to make this a smooth transition, and then to ensure the landlord also that, they're not alone and they have some support.
Yeah, I
You know?
agree.
This is all very sound and welcome advice. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I also think there's opportunities to partner with our legal aid entities as well, to maybe try to have them step in where maybe eviction isn't the option, but it's maybe the family will move out at the end of the month. And if we can move that family out, we can move another family in. And that way the unit won't be vacant and the landlords aren't losing as much money. So I think there's some opportunities there to work together. And I think that that's happened before in the past with some of the families that we've had some issues with, where that wasn't the best arrangement for them in that household.
Yeah, thank you for that, Alex. That's a good point.
It sounds like when we're talking about retaining landlords through some of the issues that come up, that sometimes we maybe can't salvage the relationship with that particular client, that particular tenant, but we can salvage the relationship with the landlord, so that even though we have to help that tenant, that client find housing elsewhere, we can move somebody else into that unit once it's available. Is that lining up with what people are experiencing?
And I think that's exactly what James Martin was saying in regards to utilizing the risk mitigation fund is, yes, that tenant did some damage to that unit, but because we were able to pay a little bit of money, then that landlord was willing to rent that unit to another household. So like I said, that client, it didn't work out with that landlord, but that unit was still available to be utilized for other tenants, and that relationship was salvaged with the landlord for $500. Now up to $2,500, but at that time, $500.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and then we have to remember, with our case management, and just like everyone else, we want our clients to be, sustainable.
Mhm.
We want them to, have jobs. We want them to, pursue training opportunities. So, I mean, that is the goal, to meet with them, to, you know, encourage them to, hey, you need to do this so you can keep you know, your apartment. We're stepping you down. This coming month, you're going to be responsible for, 50% of the rent. What's your plan? So stuff like that. So there is that, that responsibility for, clients, tenants to become self-sufficient, become sustainable.
Yeah, and that's the most important part, because if they understand that they have a part to play after they're housed, then it'll make it more easier for them to stay sustainable if they understand what they have to do, and not just being handed some money and say, yeah, here's your place. You need to be able to take some ownership of this, and also stay in contact with the landlord and make sure that you have your side of the pie going in.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Do we have any other suggestions for how to connect with new landlords who maybe have never worked with a housing assistance program in the past?
Well, Phil mentioned in regards to when you make that first point of contact, you always ask, you know, do you have partners in the business? Do you know of any others that might have, you know, housing that's available? So that's a great way to, you know, network and things of that nature. And of course, when you do meet new landlords, you always want to pass out business cards. And once you tell them a little bit about your program, what you are trying to accomplish, you know, just by someone mentioned kind of by word of mouth, that might have been you as well, Phil, where you start to get calls from individuals, you know, and I've explained to Alex before in the past, I get calls from individuals, you know, out of the blue all the time. Hey, I got your business card from landlord so and so, he says, and I have to explain to them kind of the process of how everything works, because it can get a little carried away. They assume that, you know, I'm going to write a check out for them that day there, get them into a rental property the next day. But, you know, once you explain the process of the program, just meeting individuals. And one thing that I do, I'm sure everybody does the same thing, is, you know, there's so many just search engines that you can utilize and you can use. Even if I feel a rental property is well beyond, you know, it can be a 2-bedroom for $3,000. If it just shows a name and a telephone number, I'm still going to call on that number because I quite honestly don't know what they have available. I don't care what the price is on it. I am utilizing every opportunity I see, whether it's Zillow, Trulia, you know, you name it. I am going to make every single phone call I can because maybe they have multiple properties. Maybe this is their high-end property, and maybe they know someone. So I want to introduce myself. I want to connect with them, because if we're just looking for the affordable ones, they're few and far between. You know, we won't be making many phone calls. So you gotta, you gotta exhaust all your options, and the more phone calls you make, the more opportunity it presents for you.
I recall, and Alex, I mean, this is way back when the housing specialist meetings used to meet in person. I know once we discussed trying to do like a landlord workshop, or, you know, invite landlords in from various organizations, or, you know, uh, rental associations and things of that nature, and introduce them to rapid rehousing. And, you know, because there's still a lot of landlords out there who may be willing to work with third party rapid rehousing, who may not, who just don't know, who don't understand rapid rehousing. And I think, you know, it would be an excellent opportunity to try to educate the, you know, people who are not hearing the message on, you know, rapid rehousing and what we do. I think that's something that, you know, us as a group should potentially revisit.
Thank you for that suggestion. Oh,
We
Alex, go
didn't get a
ahead.
lot of traction on that though, James. If you remember, we did hold an event.
I know, but that was then. I mean, that was, you know, well before, you know, pre-COVID, you know,
That's
so who knows? I
absolutely,
mean,
absolutely it
I
was. I
think
remember
COVID
we did a,
changed a
a
lot of
raffle.
people's, you know, perspective on things. So,
Mhm.
you know,
I
sometimes, you know, coming back around, second, you know, the second bite of the apple, maybe it works. I know, who knows? But, and I know, being, like, as David said, making those phone calls, you know, driving around, you know, kind of the old school ways and those kind of things. But I think, you know, that I just think a lot of landlords just don't know what rapid rehousing is and what it entails and things of that nature, whether it's for families, whether it's for individuals, veterans, whomever.
I agree with that, because I know when we had the emergency housing vouchers, James, I used to sit down with Alex, and it was amazing. You know, people really don't know how the emergency housing vouchers work. You know, immediately when I would talk to him on the telephone, and I told Alex, I said, I got to meet with these folks, you know, face to face, because then when I'm there and I do my presentation, they get it. Then they understand that, hey, man, this is quantifiable, an opportunity for me to not have to worry about my monthly rent coming to me.
Mhm.
So it makes sense. Explain this to me again. So how does this all work? And you cover move-in expenses on top of that? hey, I'm all in, you know. And when you compare an emergency housing voucher with move-in expenses, you can just sit back and kick up your feet. That's an easy day. If a landlord's not willing to take that on, man, they're missing the train. I'm telling you. I'd love those emergency housing vouchers. If we
Yeah,
could
I
get some
mean,
more of those.
but just the overall, I mean, just there are some misconceptions about what rapid rehousing is. A lot of people don't know what, the different roles, what HLA does, what HEP does. A lot of people don't understand the connection between that, and people don't understand that, Pinellas County, Board of County Commissioners kind of, sanction, for lack of a better word, embrace the opportunity to, have rapid housing incorporated
Yeah,
in our county.
yeah.
So, people are missing what it is, I think.
They really are. In my experience, the only individuals that are familiar with some of our programs, they've worked with Section 8 in the
Yeah,
past.
yeah,
And
that's true.
other than that, a majority of them, you have to kind of, you know, sit them down, and it's like just an orientation on what HLA is and all our programs and what we do. But the only ones I've ever come across in my 4+ years with HLA are individuals that have dealt with Section 8, and they know about the housing authorities, and they kind of have their, finger on the pulse, and they know a little bit, but still, like you said, James,
Yeah,
they don't.
I think it's just education. I mean, I think, I think that's part of the uh, equation. I mean, among other things. I mean, I think educating the general public about what it is. I mean, I think that's a good start.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It sounds like the a landlord workshop kind of thing would kind of fall into this next question. But real quick, are there any particular marketing activities or materials that anybody has found particularly successful? Other than, of course, that word of mouth, face to face contact, but any materials that you've put out there or events that you have held that have been particularly successful?
Has anyone used any type of digital advertising?
No.
Facebook, Instagram, I'm just curious to know,
Well, beyond what county does, I mean, I'm sure there are some. I'm almost positive information about rapid housing through QR codes and things of that nature. I know we've worked with our marketing to try to internally to try to come up with ideas and just trying to get word out there, even down to what kind of brochures to use, and and where to put those brochures, um, and there's so many community events, workshops, um, career fairs, and things of that nature, and it's just a matter of getting out there, as you said, David, face to face, and pressing the flesh, as they say, and just. But
So,
again, marketing tools, that I mean, I think that's something that's maybe missing for a lot of us, I think.
so for me, the more personal, the better. Like just texting with a potential landlord or other landlords that I've worked with. So for me, it was like the more personal communication, the better. I mean, I can hand out flyers. I can do hand them things that I got off of um, the internet or something. But um, talking and texting and meeting with them, that's to me is the most useful way to retain and to gain new landlord relationships. The more personal that I'm standing here talking to them or I'm texting them, the better relationship I can build with them.
Thank you.
So,
If Go ahead.
sorry, I was going to chime in on a couple of things that have been talked about. First, on the digital stuff, I can't say that first off, I don't, maybe I should take a step back. David, I know we've talked in the past, but for everybody else here, and certainly Victoria and Alex were on the staff, but for everybody else, I don't know if we've met or talked together before in the past. So just as sort of the 30,000 foot Bay Area Apartment Association, trade association representing rental housing industry in the greater Tampa Bay region, including Pinellas County, our members mostly are the big apartment communities, but we have a lot of members with small apartment communities and single family as well. So, we've got a mix in terms of our membership, who either own, operate, build, or some combination of the three, rental housing. And so, with that as background, um, you know, certainly the majority, and I'd say probably the vast majority of rental housing in our territory are members, and they're the management company or the individual apartment community. And so we've been able to communicate information out to our members about different programs in the past, in particular, using sort of that digital platform during COVID, when there was a lot of funding for folks impacted by COVID, rental assistance. We were able to get that information out to our members. We put that in a one pager. We put that out on Facebook, on LinkedIn, for links to get more information on stuff like that. And from what I can tell, it was pretty successful. So I think the way it's put out and who you're directing it to could potentially have a good impact. I'll also add, in terms of from what I'm hearing, face-to-face meetings with landlords is really the way to build the relationship, the start of building that relationship. And I think that's hitting the nail on the head. Along those lines, we have in the past, we have done one event specifically to do exactly that, but we partnered with THHI over in Hillsborough, where we had essentially a mixer, I guess, where people, our members who might be interested in working with THHI and their partners came, and THHI brought all their partners, and we kind of just hung out for an hour in the morning for them to sort of do meet and greet. I mean, I can't promise success per se, but that's something, since we've done it in the past, I would imagine we can do again in the future.
Yeah, Eric, I like
if people are interested.
Yeah, anything like that is always positive, but you can get a room of like-minded individuals, and you can pass out some business cards. Can't go wrong. Like you said, there's no guarantees, but it's a tremendous plus.
Gotcha. So we're certainly open and interested in helping with that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, moving on to our next thing. We've already talked a little bit about this, but let's really dive into landlord incentives. And for anybody, I'm guessing that everybody on this call is familiar with the term landlord incentives, but assumptions are how we end up in the wrong place. So just to be clear, when we talk about landlord incentives, we are talking about how we can encourage landlords to rent to our clients to work with our programs. Landlord incentives might include an extra month of rent up front. It might include an increased security deposit. It might include, hey, we'll pay that application fee. We'll get it in today, one-time payments, painting a room. Lots of things can qualify as landlord incentives, but that's really what we're kind of talking about here. So I'm wondering what kind of landlord incentives folks on this call have used to really encourage landlords to work with your program. And then, has it actually made a difference? Has that been the thing that made the landlord say, you know what, I was going between client A, who's just an independent client, and client B, who is your client, but because you're going to do this, I'm going to go ahead and go with client B. So has there been anything like that you've found great success with?
Landlord incentives work. They work, okay? Because anytime you tell someone, you're going to cover move-in expenses on top of the move-in expenses, there's an incentive going directly to the landlord. They work. And the reason they work is because when you literally take a high risk situation and that incentive and those move-in expenses, that de-escalates that situation from high risk to something of an investment for that landlord. And money talks. It really does. And when you talk about, hey, incentives for you as well, this is our thank you to you for working with our clients. There's many things, as you just mentioned, maybe they use it to paint the apartment. Maybe the washer or the dryer needed to be replaced in the unit. Um, this is this is an investment for them. It's money they didn't have to pull directly out of their bank account. You know, it's not charity; it's an investment for an owner or a landlord, and they do work. Absolutely, it's tremendous
So
firepower.
yeah, so when I work with a lot of my clients, we have what we call a landlord pre-approval letter that I would give them, that I would give to the client to give to the landlord. And basically, what this is they put in all of the information. It's almost like a little mini kind of a lease kind of thing, but what really is on here is what the landlord is asking for before the client moves in. So it would be application fee, administrative fee, deposit fee, monthly rent fee, and using this and going through what I usually would apply this to is the AFAB Lift program through 211. That is up to $4,000 to help them move into a place. So when whatever they put on here, as long as it's under $4,000, they would most likely get this approved. And that's what I've been using for a lot of clients here at HEP. So that is a big plus for landlords when they know that if they put, as long as they put whatever they put down here, as long as it's under $4,000, most likely they would get that paid. And a lot of times this is good for the client because a lot of times they can get one, maybe sometimes even 2 months rent paid in advance before when they move in, before they even walk through the door. So that's what I've been using here.
So I can say that we previously had some landlord incentives that worked fantastically. This was several years ago. We no longer have it, but we had funding through DCF, ESG, CV2, and that included money for signing bonuses for landlords. We could pay up to 3 months the rent amount in incentives. Now that did include the security deposit. So if they asked for a month of security deposit, we would be limited to the 2 months for landlord incentives. But landlords were much, much more willing to work with us and rent to households with barriers with those landlord incentives. And like David said, it was interesting that the landlords weren't just using that money though to line their own pockets. They were making upgrades to the units, adding a washer and dryer so that the client could use it in the unit, repairing the fence so that the dog could run around in the yard without issues, adding a closet to a room so that now it's a bedroom for their child. So I found that to be very interesting. But they definitely were willing to work with us when we were able to give that extra money. And then coupled with the emergency housing vouchers that we had in the community at the time, it was a match made in heaven. I mean, it really was. We had landlords coming to us asking for tenants so that they could rent to us. So I think that extra money really, really important. In addition to saying that we have a risk mitigation fund if damages are their concern, we've got this. Having that third party support. If you run into an issue, you can call me. You don't have to worry about just working directly with the client. So I think there are a variety of different methods for landlord recruitment and incentives that can be used depending on each client situation as a tool in the toolbox. But money definitely talks. It really does. As everyone has said on here, money does make a really, really big difference. So I think having some flexible funding that could be utilized to make that difference in renting to a client would be super helpful in our community.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you all. Is there anybody on the call? Because I know there are a few folks who, and I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, don't worry. But I know that there are a few folks from some agencies who do a lot of housing programs who might have some incentives that we haven't considered. And is there anybody on the call who maybe hasn't shared yet who would like to share an incentive that has really worked for you? or that you think would be absolutely fantastic if only you could pay for it or something like that. I'm not seeing anybody come off mute. If you have ideas, though, please throw them in the chat. On that note, then, I guess for everybody, is there anything that you think would make a really big difference if only you could do it? So an incentive that, you know, maybe you were once able to offer or you've never been able to offer, but if there was, for instance, available funding, you think would really, really help recruit new landlords or ensure that your clients are able to stay in their units with their current landlords?
Well, I took some notes. You know, I was overthinking this, but I don't know if this would ever come. Yeah, it's just like I said, Victor, I think it's just overthinking in regards to the whole realm of what we do and recruitment of landlords and incentives. Alex mentioned, you know, the sign-on bonuses, and she's right. The landlords, they truly did not pocket that money. It was an opportunity for them to upgrade the unit, to make the unit right, so they didn't have to worry about it and take money out of their account. But there's a number of things that I thought about, and I think I was overthinking this, you know, as I was trying to get my thoughts together last night in regards to from marketing tools to what we could use when I'm out doing face-to-face visits with landlords. A couple of them, I don't even know how they would even, you know, become a reality. Like as you guys touched on earlier with the risk management, you know, excuse me, risk mitigation, some of those, that's just peace of mind in regards to helping landlords out if anything goes wrong. But I thought about, you know, if when I get feedback from a lot of the landlords and the owners is in regards to property taxes and things of that nature going up. So I thought about, is there some way we could work with, maybe partner with other agencies, and maybe we could work this out on our own, where we give them peace of mind, where if they work with our tenants, we help them out in certain ways where um, tax incentives, you know, tax abatements or insurance credits or anything of that nature, because a lot of them have said the reason I'm raising my rent is because that is just the market right now. Since the hurricanes or even before, my property management taxes have gone up. My insurance has gone up. So I need to keep up with the times. I can't continue to charge this amount of rent. Otherwise, I'm losing money. I'm just purging money by allowing a family or an individual to rent it at that price with the cost of living right now. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's something we can do to maybe, like I said, insurance credits, tax abatements or anything of that nature, something that gives them peace of mind to say, oh, that sounds like a great idea. You guys can actually help me with that, if that makes sense. So
That's a really cool idea. And I certainly can't make things like that happen, but I'm putting it on the list because I think that's a really cool suggestion, David.
yeah,
And that's the kind of thing that we want to make sure we share with the board, with the Funders Council. It's not just about what we're doing right now, it's about what could maybe be done in the future. So thank you for that.
no problem. Like I said, Victoria, I was overthinking this, and I thought, well, it's worth bringing up. So maybe it can work in the future, you know. So
hey, we never know if we don't throw it out there. So let's
yeah,
throw it out there.
yeah.
Excellent. And then I did see in the chat, you know, additional funding for deposits would be the best incentive. We have many clients with evictions, and many are hesitant to take them without that extra security. So making sure that landlords feel secure in what we are doing really sounds like the number one thing. Make sure that you have a face-to-face relationship, a good relationship where they know they can call you. If possible, make sure that you add some flexible funding into the whole interaction. A little incentive, an extra month or something like that, because it helps the landlord and the tenant. So I think that these are some great suggestions so far. As we continue on, there was a little bit, somebody mentioned something about this earlier, but it was a really quick note. When we talk about recruiting landlords, some folks are all numbers and bring me the data. That's really all I want to see. You tell me that if I have somebody with a housing voucher, HUD's going to pay me every single month, no matter what else is happening. I'm in. But some people need a little bit more of a personal connection to this, so that they make that change, because I think we all know that we are asking landlords who have never worked with programs before to make a little bit of a shift. So are there any methods of storytelling or any types of stories or anything like that that you've found particularly impactful when you are talking with landlords?
Victor, are we focused on just kind of like data driven or anything like that, or feedback for landlords to take a look at?
Um,
Or
I'm asking really about our client stories. So I do think on that note, having data is really helpful. So when we talk
Mhm.
about like one pagers, having data on how many people have been housed, on the average rent payments and things like that. But I'm really here asking about client stories, success stories, stories from successes with other landlords, really that part of our job that is emotional, and a little bit more focused on storytelling. Or if
Yeah,
that's not a big part of it, let's say that's not a big part of it and it's not where we need to focus.
yeah. I've talked to a lot of, clients and landlords as well. So I think it's kind of a 50-50 thing when, you know, we do our best to get individuals and families into units, but sometimes you just make that perfect match. And I've gotten a lot of calls from not only clients as well as landlords saying they've been fantastic. Thank you so much, and look forward to working with you guys in the past. And that's kind of important. But for success stories for both sides, I think I've had landlords say, I was a little leery at first, and this worked out fantastic. And of course, that within itself is a relationship builder. If what Phil talked about earlier, if tenants are doing their part, they help build our lasting relationships. And at the same time, I've had clients tell me that thank you guys so much for everything you guys have done, for us, and we really enjoy our relationship with the landlord. But it's a way for that I've heard from clients to get them stability and feel grounded. And when they feel grounded, it alleviates their stress. I've heard that many a times from clients in regards to if there's kids involved, the kids are doing much better in school. Now that we have a stable roof over our head, my job seems to be less stressful now that I have a roof over my head, and life seems to be a little bit more manageable. So, yeah, I've heard that quite often from individuals that have reached out, and it's nice to get both sides from both the client as well as the owner and the landlord. So,
Especially when you have families who are under a lot of stress because they already have evictions, and they're sitting there trying to find the perfect place for them and their kids, but they know it's going to be difficult because they have an eviction or two. So
yeah,
when you find a private landlord who's willing to work with them and they make that connection, and the landlord is willing to take that chance with this family, and they get that to that place, and everybody's good. The kids are in school, and the landlord is understanding that yes, you had an eviction, but I'm going to give you an opportunity. And then on top of that, they have the funding to go with that. Then it's a match made in heaven, and that happens
yeah,
every once in a while, and it's a beautiful thing.
yeah, it really is. Yeah.
And then I think
Yeah,
communicating with the tenants about addressing maybe some of the income concerns, where if a landlord
Yeah.
says, well, you don't make 3 times the rent amount, how are you going to be able to afford this unit of $1,300 a month?
Right.
The tenant saying, well, I've been paying $400 a week to stay in a hotel, and I've been paying that, but that's why I couldn't save up enough money in order to get a security deposit in first month's rent. I'm getting now assisted with this. I'm saving on that money that I would have paid for this month's rent. So now I'm ahead of the game. I'm not only ahead of the game in what I've been spending to keep a roof over my head. Now I'm ahead because I've had an agency participate and help me with first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, whatever it is. So I think also communicating that with the tenants of saying, you need to tell your story too. Like you may not meet their requirements on paper, but you can make this work. And here's why, and here's what you've done and how resilient you are.
And a lot of times you can see that when you're sitting down with the family before any of this happens, and you can tell that this, if this person just had an opportunity, it'll really work. So you try to get the perfect landlord, well, not perfect landlord, but that particular landlord who's willing to take that chance. And if only you would give this person a chance, that they will actually do it, and they can make it work.
Excellent. So very person-centric, all about the specific tenant and the specific landlord and the impact that it'll have on them as individuals, with a little bit of, and hey, people love working with us, just by the way, in case you're curious. So a little bit of that. Okay. I like that. Any other suggestions?
I would just
No?
say, touching on things that have impacted all of us, like COVID. I think we all saw that in the blink of an eye, our entire lives could be changed by a disaster that has had, no personal, we didn't do anything ourselves. And I think landlords saw that. So I think that was really impactful to understand in client situations that COVID did impact everybody, including clients, and then the hurricanes as well. I mean, we were all living in Pinellas County. We've all been impacted by the hurricanes, which were a natural disaster. So I think kind of feeding into that with the landlords too, like you know how it was, you were here too. This is what happened as a result of the hurricane, a natural disaster. Now, what can we do moving forward to make sure that they're sustainable and in stable housing after everything that's happened in our community?
Okay. So really making sure that we humanize in general, folks experiencing homelessness or housing instability and needing some assistance. Yeah, that's definitely impactful. Thank you. All right. Anything else? No? All right. So we've already talked a lot about strategies for retaining landlords, but I think that it's really important that we continue that conversation because I know that there's more to it. So we've already talked about make sure that you have regular check-ins with your landlord. Make sure that the landlord knows you are available. But what else can we do to make sure that we are retaining landlords? For instance, maybe there is a 6-month gap between when we put somebody with them. How do we make sure that that relationship is maintained? Or they've had a bad relationship. How do we make sure that they want to rent to us and our clients again? Or everything's going well and you just want to make sure that they feel the same way and continue to work with you. So what do we do right now, or what do we think we could do in the future to make sure that landlords want to keep coming back and want to keep answering our calls?
Well, continued follow up. We touched on it. Just continue to follow up and support. And like I said, when we get the clients into the home, we don't want the landlord to feel like that's it. We're about to just walk away and abandon you. We want them to know and assure them that anytime that you need to reach out to me by phone, email, text, as Phil said, you can do that. I'm always available. But they just need to know that we're here for ongoing support. And I think that truly helps. And constantly staying in contact with them, because for the most part, we're going to reach out to them. They might have multiple units. So we're going to keep that line of contact going anyway. But also, this was addressed earlier, and not just staying in contact with the landlord, but constant contact with the clients as well. How are you doing? How's everything going? Because you need to hear it from the horse's mouth. Everything's going swell. We're good. And you can tell right away if something's not right. So both sides, you need to hear that from both sides to make sure everything is running smoothly, and that transition since they moved in is paying off. So I think just ongoing contact with both the landlord and the client pays off.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other suggestions for how we can retain landlords and make sure that our landlords are happy and want to keep working with us or our partners? For instance, maybe our team doesn't have anybody to go into a 3-bedroom in Clearwater right now, but we know for a fact that Phil up at HEP is looking for that exact unit. So how do we make sure that landlords want to keep working with us and our partners?
Well, that's basically just communicating amongst each other, internally. So we make sure, hey, Phil, James, I got this unit here. I got this landlord that has a 3-bedroom. We don't have a need for this 3-bedroom right now, but do you guys have someone that can fast track and take over this 3-bedroom unit that you think would be a good fit for the unit? I think that's a good situation where it helps us, maintain contact amongst each other, but it also allows us to fill that unit as soon as possible so it's not sitting vacant.
That would be a lovely situation.
And that's good for the landlords too. That helps show landlords like, hey, it's just not just us. We're a partnership here. We're a community. We all have, the same missions. I think that's important too, and it helps to retain landlords because they think, oh, if I call David and I say I've got a unit, he's going to get it filled. Whether it be a client that he's working with, a client that Phil's working with, a client that James is working with, he's going to get it filled. So I don't need to worry about going on Zillow or Trulia and putting that unit up on the market because I'm going to get it filled through one of the community programs.
Right.
And that's, of course, ideal. It's the best case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Excellent. Phil, I expect you to answer every phone call I have for the next little bit.
Okay.
That's awesome. Is there anything else that we think is really important to consider, or any needs that the landlord might have that we really haven't considered here that we should talk about? Because we have to take into account what the landlord needs. It's obviously not just about us, not just about our clients. We have to make sure we're meeting their needs as well. So, any other landlord needs that we haven't considered?
I mean, it comes down to their security. That's what they need, and that's what they want. They want to be secure that they're handing over their property to a family and people that's going to take care of it, and that they're also going to get their rent in a timely manner. I mean, the basic stuff, just they don't want to, sleep at night wondering if the kids are tearing up the walls or, something's going on that they don't know of. But they just want security. That's all, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that
I
makes
agree.
sense. Security and communication.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Are there any funders on the line with us right now who have any questions or any suggestions? Is there anything that you've really been wondering about how agencies work with landlords that we might be able to answer in this group? I'm not seeing anybody come off the line. All right. What about, we've talked a lot about like rapid rehousing programs here today. What about some of our other programs that are on the line with us? Is there anybody who would like to talk about this from the perspective of, let's say, vouchers, or from the perspective of a specialty provider like, working with veterans or survivors? Come on, y'all, don't make me start calling on people. No? All right. Everybody's just signing off on everything we've said so far. Okay. All right. As we continue on, I guess then I'll ask about some best methods of communication. I won't say that 5 times fast.
Actually, before you fully move on,
Please.
I'll just say I totally agree with on the last section about what landlords need. Um, all those points. I mean, that fourth one really sums it up. But I will add one thing is keeping whatever process there is as streamlined and simple as possible. It's red tape and making things harder, lots of reporting, lots of writing, lots of communicating to get simple things done is a killer in being able to form these long lasting partnerships.
That is a really important note, Eric. Thank you. Because I think we all know that we deal with a lot of red tape all the time. I think that that's anybody who works in grants has a lot of reporting and a lot of requirements that we have to meet. So making sure that we streamline that before we reach out to the landlord with any of it. Don't send 5 emails, send 1 email with 5 things. Might make things easier. So that's a great point as well. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'll take these at any time. Feel free to throw them out there. So we've talked about communication methods. Obviously, face-to-face seems to be the winner. You seem to get the most from face-to-face interactions with landlords and potential landlords. It sounds like there is a lot of texting, which I love for one. I find that a very easy way to stay in contact with folks, as well as some maybe emails and whatnot. I also noticed in the chat, one person brought up regular assessments with their clients and with their tenants. So I think that is probably something we also want to talk about when we talk about regular communication, because regular communication with our landlords, regular communication with our tenants, and what that looks like is a really important part of this. So I'm going to start by asking the person who's doing regular assessments with clients as a part of that process. Can you provide a little bit more information about that? Maybe what that looks like, why it's valuable, stuff like that?
So we, with one of my duties, responsibilities, once we get somebody housed, we do tenancy assessments, and that's generally just a phone call, or if I can't get a hold of the landlord in a timely manner, I'll scan and email it to them. But it's essentially, at 30, 90, and 180 days of being housed, it's a tool that we've incorporated and used, probably for the last 3 years maybe. And it's just a regular way of checking up. I think it's 8 questions, if I'm not mistaken. And it's basically, we're just asking, hey, is the rent being paid on time? And that's including, our portion, and if the client has a portion of rent that needs to be paid. So, are you getting the rent? So whether that's the client or if the county's, if our process is slow, hey, that's something that we want to be aware of. Your feedback to, our, clerk finance people. So it's just a way of kind of checking out, has there been any maintenance issues? Is the client getting along with the neighbors? And that's one of the questions. Are they in compliance with their lease? So trying to be proactive and trying to catch things before they become major issues. And I think landlords really appreciate that, especially the ones that we work with for a long time. And as David said, it's just a matter of building that rapport, that relationship. And it really works for us. And again, and I also use it as an opportunity. Oh yeah, by the way, do you have any units available? And again, that's just another way of having that regular contact, as opposed to waiting before there's a problem. 3 months down the line. The client hasn't been paying the rent. The house is a mess. And again, in addition to me doing what I do, our case managers go out to the home and they're kind of assessing the condition of the home as well. So having those home visits is as important as doing our tenancy assessments.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Also, sorry, I didn't realize I was typing unmuted there. My keyboard is very loud. Sorry if everybody was listening to that. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, James. Really appreciate that information. Is there anything else that another agency is doing to make sure you are maintaining regular contact that you have found success in?
So, one of the things that I do as a housing navigator here, Largo, the city of Largo has um, obtained 20 beds here, four for females, and I think it's 20 for males. And so that particular program, they provide $1,200 to each client upon moving out, just like like an incentive for them to move out. So part of what I do is each client comes through me and gets housed. I would conduct case management with that client for the next year. So I would go through HMIS once a month, call them, ask them how things are going, and then put it into HMIS as a log, and then just kind of do that with each client as they go through up to a year with each one, just to keep track of them and to make sure everything's okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other suggestions for communication? All right. Oh, okay. And then we've talked a lot about this, about support that might be offered to landlords. So things like
like to return these two things. Membership, please. Okay.
We've talked a lot about different supports that might be offered for landlords, making sure that you're available to answer phone calls and things like that. But is there anything outside of just making sure that you are available to the landlord that you do to support the landlord, or that you think you could do or should do in a perfect world?
Well, just the ongoing contact, is important, but I think the landlord just needs to know that that call is not going to, go in vain. So he needs to trust in you and know that when he reaches out to you, you're going to follow up with him and at least see what you can do to help out and better the situation. There's no guarantees. We talked about it earlier that, depending on how far gone this is, there's no guarantees we can, take care of certain things. But yes, throughout the duration of the lease agreement, there needs to be regular contact. And the landlord just needs to know that, when he reaches out to you, that is a point of contact and support that they can count on.
Thank you, David. Sorry, again, I did it again where I'm typing off mute. All right. Yes, Miss Watson.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I've been trying not to speak because I lost my voice. But one thing I was going to say is that sometimes it'll help them out if they have other residents that we have nothing to do with that just need like rent assistance. So I'll be like, okay, they can come to our outreach or just give them resources. And that really goes a long way. Even though we, not working with those clients, they see that we're willing to help. And so I find that kind of helps build that rapport a little bit too with the landlords because they're always looking for that.
That is a great suggestion. So opening up your assistance to other issues that they might have outside of your particular clients or your particular programs or anybody involved in programs. That's a great suggestion. Love that. Any other notes for support?
I'll just underline that last point. I think that's an excellent point. I can tell you, I get calls probably at least once every couple of weeks from a member saying, "Hey, I've got this resident. They've got an issue. They need rent assistance. What's out there?" So that's a huge thing too.
Awesome. So maybe be knowledgeable not just about your services, but about some of the services that your partners offer. So maybe if, for instance, HLA can't offer something, we can say, But you know what? You should call Metropolitan Ministries because they have this awesome program right now. I don't know if it's the exact right fit, but it could really work out for you and it could be the answer. So that kind of thing. I love that as a suggestion. Um, anything else as far as support for landlords is concerned? All right. What about, we've talked about support for our tenants as well, but I think that that's a really big part of making sure that our landlords know we are still involved. So we've talked about making sure that tenants know that they can call you, checking in with tenants, sharing workforce development opportunities with tenants and things like that. But are there any other resources that we can share with our clients that might help them maintain that stable unit and help our landlords feel more secure?
I think someone touched on it earlier in regards to, they dropped a link in there earlier in regards to certain programs and things that they can, fall back on. But I talk to a lot of the clients when they're going to rental properties, and sometimes I like to be there as well and meet the clients, when they're meeting the owner or the landlord for the first time. So um, one thing that's really worked for me as a landlord liaison in starting that relationship building is, believe it or not, sometimes the owners don't get a chance to meet the clients. And I like for the clients to meet, if they're able to get there face to face, just like I like to build that relationship. I like for them to be there and work on building that relationship, shake hands when I'm there. Then they can ask questions back and forth, get to know one another. Um, I think that, sorry, Victoria, I'm going a little third base, but I wanted to throw that out there as well.
Hey, that seems like a great way to support both the landlord and the tenant. We've talked a lot about how valuable face-to-face interactions are on this call, and providing an opportunity for the landlord and the tenant to enjoy that same face-to-face conversation or interaction seems valuable. So thank you. And yes, Ms. Watson.
Yes. Okay. So this is more so geared towards when we have like a program like rapid rehousing or up and out. Is we really try to make sure that the case manager is partnering with the landlord, and they do inspections when they go out to the home. If there's issues with the property, they'll let the landlord know. Again, it's just kind of like building that trust with them, making sure that the property's not destroyed, which is what they're concerned about a lot of times. We also do like some housekeeping education. And then just generally, before we enter the client into the unit, we have a meeting with them talking about ways they can be a successful tenant, when they need to put in maintenance requests, things like that, like how to upkeep their apartment, just to kind of try to make it so that the landlord feels supported and knows that we're also, keeping track of the same things, basically.
Excellent. Thank you. Apartment upkeep. I wish that somebody had offered one of those to me at 18 years old. That would have been fantastic. That's great. Wonderful. Anything else that we want to talk about as far as landlord or tenant support is concerned? No? All right. Are there any funding opportunities that y'all want to share? Or are there any funding opportunities that you don't know of right now or that you wish would exist? I say this not because I can magic up funds. I really wish that I had those powers. If I did, I promise I would visit all of you tomorrow. But while we are sharing this with our providers council, with our funders council, we always want to ask, like, what is the need from our providers? What would really make a difference as far as funding is concerned? What has made a difference as far as funding is concerned? What do you need?
So I talked about landlord incentives that we've had in the past that were able to be used for signing bonuses. It was up to 3 months. That was great. But you know what else would be great would be any amount of money that could be used as a signing bonus for a landlord, even if it's $500 per landlord to be used as a signing bonus. And maybe that's a one-time payment for the landlord for the first unit that they rent to us. But that could be the foot in the door for additional housing opportunities, because that landlord may have other units that become available and then people move out and then they send you other units. So $500 is really a very small price to pay in order to build that relationship. And I think that would be super helpful. I'm just making up $500 because I think that's been used in the past by the housing authorities for vouchers. But I think that amount of money, if you think, oh, I'm going to house 20 households, $500, $10,000 in flexible funding to be able to be utilized for a signing bonus, I think could really, really go a long way with getting some households with that barriers housed and getting landlords open to the opportunity of working with some of our programs.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. Also, more rapid rehousing funding in addition to subsidies or access to housing authority vouchers. We no longer have the EHV in Hillsborough. Sorry, y'all, I'm reading from the chat. I should have started with that. We no longer have EHV in Hillsborough, and I like the idea of signing bonuses also. So more rapid rehousing funding in addition to subsidies or access to housing vouchers. Excellent, excellent, great suggestions. Anyone else? No, nobody on this call except for a few of us think that increased funding or flexible funds or specific pools of funding would be beneficial.
Like Alex said, we need money. And money talks, any little bit helps.
All right. So everybody is on board with flexible funding specifically surrounding rapid rehousing or specifically surrounding landlord incentives and then funding for housing programs. Yeah?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. In that case then, is there anything else that you want to share? That's really all that I have on this list here. Is there anything else that you want to share as far as recruiting and retaining landlords is concerned?
I think in addition to flexible funding, having funding that could be used for food, to take a landlord out for coffee, maybe a gift card for a landlord, certificates, events, things like that. James had mentioned, holding a landlord event. At that time, we had partnered with a legal aid agency and they were paying for refreshments. We had a venue. They paid for the raffle that the landlords were participating in. That all costs money, and a lot of the funding is not flexible. So being able to maybe just have a landlord fund that could be used for some of those incidentals, like taking a landlord out for coffee and discussing, maybe issues that the client might have, that the landlord might be a little more open to working with other households.
Yeah.
If they had $5 for, Starbucks gift card kind of thing. So I think there's an opportunity there for some flexible funding as well.
Excellent. Love that idea. Thank you. Anyone else? Y'all are overwhelming me right now. No? Okay. I tried. All right. Well, I really, really appreciate, I told y'all we would be done well before we were scheduled. So I really appreciate y'all taking the time to share some of these ideas, some of these successes, and some things that we think would help if only we could make them happen. And so I really can't thank you enough for taking that time to share these suggestions. We will be putting all of this into a list to share with, again, our board and our funders and providers councils. I will also share the notes from today with everybody on this call as well, because maybe you heard something that you think is a great idea and you want to take it back to your team. So we will share the recording of this and the notes from this after this as well. And if you have other ideas, please feel free to share them. Again, please feel free to share that survey. We will send that link out again, but it is in the invitation for today and in the results from today's survey as well. So you do have that in email already. Please share it with your partners. The more information that we can collect, the better. I think we all know, because we are all in a data-centered world here, that the more information we get, the better. So thank you for your participation. Thank you for your future participation. And thank you for all that you do for our community. Really appreciate the time you took today, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.